Lisa Schlettenhofer from Thorntown, Indiana. I graduated in May 2012 from Purdue University's Agricultural Communication program.
And my name is Abigail Maurer, and I'll be a senior this fall in Agricultural Communication, and I'm from Bargersville, Indiana.
Today we're going to talk about how our social science research at Purdue University has changed how we think about food. When we go home tonight, we likely will have a good meal on our table, and we won't have to think about whether that food is available, whether we were able to have it, or whether that food is safe. And it seems like a given, something that we take for granted in today's society, but that's not always the case. These undergraduate research projects started off as offshoots from United States Department of Agricultural grant, the National Integrated Food Safety Initiative, that asked us to consider how we communicate about food safety, particularly about vegetables. Purdue University, collaborating with Ohio State University and Kentucky State University, is looking at how audiences find information about vegetables and looking at audiences that don't often seek information about university, extension, or even government resources. We started to think about targeting information for low-income and minority audiences that aren't often reached by university extension programs. To do this, we looked first at expert views, the literature that's available about our audiences, finding out what messages they prefer, what locations we can find that information in. It quickly became apparent, however, that we needed to find out about our audiences from our audiences.
If you had asked me 1 year ago what differentiates the food insecure from the food secure, or those with reliable access to food and those without reliable access to food, I would have said the defining factor was monetary resources. However, as Lisa and I got into the project with the NIFC, I began to realize that there was far more that was happening beneath the surface aside from money. I began to develop this hypothesis that over here you had the food secure and over here you had the food insecure. And there was this gulf of attitudes, perspectives, knowledge, information about food that separated these two people. And that these ideas were not only defined to what they knew about food, but also how they approached life. So I decided to test this idea. And I did that by conducting a series of interviews. I did 5 with people who were food secure, and I did 5 with people who were food insecure. I worked with Abigail Boron to get to know people through a Purdue program, to talk with those who were either on food stamps or relied on food pantries heavily for their food. And I asked them questions about where their food came from, what they thought about food, how they enjoy food. And then I also interviewed 5 people who were food insecure in the same geographic area, and I asked them the exact same questions. And so then I compared their narratives, and I began to decode and unearth some of the things that were happening through their stories and what was differentiating them and what defined them. So I uncovered a lot of things, and right now I'm still going through the data and I'm still figuring out what's going on. But 2 conclusions that I wanted to briefly share were this. I found out that the food insecure very much enjoy eating food, that cooking is usually an enjoyable experience, but it's often overshadowed by the lifestyle that they have, whether that be one of illness, whether that be one of fear and uncertainty of the future, those types of things. Consequently, food is something that they enjoy alone, usually, and something that they don't eat with other people as their primary means of enjoying and taking in food. This starkly contrasts the food secure, who also enjoy eating, who enjoy the process of cooking and shopping generally. But for them, food is something that overall does not detract or is not an area of worry. So consequently, they enjoy it when they're with other people. And food is very much a means of connecting with one another and creating this solidarity as people. So those are 2 things that I've discovered. So like I said, I'm still in the process of decoding the data, of formulating a hypothesis, and I'm developing that theory firmly. And then I will be developing further questions about how we should go forward in this area of research when I'm done with the project. So while my area of research focuses on the root issues of food insecurity, poverty, etc., Lisa's tends to focus on how do we take this knowledge that we have about vegetables, vegetable safety, and how do we, in a way that's culturally sensitive, get that information to populations that are generally unreached by Purdue Extension efforts.
Abigail's research gets to the root of some of the problems, and my research looks more at a specific topic, vegetable or food safety, with a specific audiences, Hispanic or Latin American audiences, at a particular time and through a particular channel. With a Spanish minor in college, I've always been interested in issues facing Latin American immigrants and first-generation families. And as such, and from our literature, we realized how important it was to find systems that our audiences, particularly in this case Hispanic individuals, channels and systems that they trust. One such system is the English as a Second Language program. If individuals are in an English as a Second Language class, they are highly motivated to learn about new things, about the culture in the US, and of course about English vocabulary. There's over 1 million individuals in federally funded English as a Second Language programs, but there's countless more in church and other voluntary programs. Another reason to look at English as a Second Language classes was the availability of English as a Second Language instructors. Most government health campaigns or university extension materials are typically written at about a 9th grade reading level, far above the literacy levels recorded by government surveys for Hispanic individuals. So the value of an English as a Second Language program as a channel for communicating information comes from the relationship with the English as a Second Language instructor and their ability to interpret, to guide, and to support the learner as they continue to learn English, but also about many customs in the US culture. As such, for my research, I began to do 10 in-depth interviews with English as a Second Language instructors in the community. I asked them questions about where they get their materials from, what sources they trust, and their overall views of food and food safety for their learners, for the Hispanic audiences. I found in these interviews that English as a Second Language courses have the potential to change behaviors for the participants, particularly when there's been a relationship of trust established between the instructor and the learner. In addition, with repetition in the classroom and behavior demonstrated by the instructor. Also, most instructors use a loosely established curriculum. They supplement book-based curriculums with resources. So university extension materials could easily fit into a English as a Second Language program in the libraries that the instructors collect of resources. Food is often discussed in English as a Second Language classes, but food safety isn't. The instructors weren't opposed to the idea, it just wasn't something that had come up. And finally, English as a Second Language instructors did not express a preferred method for receiving contact with external materials, such as from a university extension source. From mail, email, to direct contact, there was a wide variety of ways that the instructors wanted to receive information. The next steps for my project are developing materials that can be used in the English as a Second Language classrooms to express food safety, and also using these materials to see how other projects could be developed. There's countless things from university extension that could be passed on to English as a Second Language learners. So I'm working on developing worksheets, flashcards, example conversations that hopefully will be used in English as a Second Language classrooms around the state and around the country. Continuing development of materials is so important to reach these audiences because they are ready to learn. They've already have a high level of motivation, they're in the place to do it, and this is a great way for university extension or other groups to get connected to provide the technical resources within the English as a Second Language units.
Farmer and philosopher Wendell Berry once said that rats and roaches live by competition under the laws of supply and demand. It is the privilege of human beings to live under the laws of justice and mercy. As we've explored these areas of social science, we've come to this firm conclusion that this research is not about us or what we can gain. Instead, we're making a deliberate decision to identify social problems that exist in our world and enter into those problems with the goal of establishing justice and mercy where it is lacking. For Lisa, pursuing this goal has meant going to Hispanic populations and developing materials for them so that they can have scientifically sound, relevant material for their lives. For me, this has meant having conversations with people who are food insecure and often in poverty, and discussing with them the hardships of these areas so that we can understand and develop programs that help them overcome those hardships in life. Purdue Agricultural Communication is excited about the future of research in our field. We want to continue in the spirit of the land-grant institutions, and that is to promote research in the agricultural and mechanical arts. However, we recognize that the United States has changed drastically in the 150 years since the land-grant system was first established. Purdue Agricultural Communication wants to pursue social science research that is grounded in literature and a current knowledge of what's being discussed about these areas that we're interested in. However, we also want to acknowledge that there is a call upon our lives as researchers, a call that beckons us to take these ideas of mercy and justice and apply them to our research. We want these principles to be embedded in our methodologies, in our theories, and in our discussions as we talk about these issues that affront us as agricultural communication researchers in the future.